Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Tomás Ferreira, Leonardo Miranda,
Oh, hi there.
and Miguel Aido.
Oh, hello.
As part of our awards season segment, we'll be looking at the likely contenders for the 2025 Oscars. Today we talk about the substance, but before any ado, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. The Substance is a 2024 body horror film written, directed, co-edited, and co-produced by Coralie Fargeat. It follows a fading celebrity, Elizabeth Sparkle, who, after being fired by her producer due to her age, uses a black market drug that creates a much younger version of herself with unexpected side effects. The Substance had its world premiere at Cannes, where Fargeat won Best Screenplay, becoming a critical and commercial success and receiving 5 nominations at this year's Golden Globes, winning Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy for Demi Moore. Clearly, a lot of people around the world embrace the grotesque chemical bath of lipstick, Botox, and entrails of Miss Sparkle. But what did RWC actually think about this new venture into the troubles of fame and self-image? Fellas, let's dive in, shall we?
Oh, we shall. We shall.
Here we go.
It was my second viewing, and I think Tomás as
It
well.
was. This was my first. I haven't seen before.
Yeah,
So you
my
guys
first
both
time.
saw it for the first time? No.
Yeah, first time.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is a movie that rivals the number of butt shots in The Fast and the Furious, which I've never thought that would be a thought. But once I was watching this movie, I was like, Jesus, the amount of butt shots in this film,
Lot of
it
ass.
rivals Fast and the Furious.
That's true.
Because, yeah,
But here it makes sense.
it makes sense.
Here's more
Makes
purposeful.
sense, yeah, exactly.
Purposeful
That is more
ass shot.
gratuitous.
So what did you guys think as a first viewer
First
of this
view.
film?
I will say, I have my cup of tea right here, and the movie was not my cup of tea.
Not my cup of tea.
Not my cup of tea.
Are you British? I'll give you a
Okay.
British answer. Spike
Yeah,
Lee, everybody
no.
reference.
I didn't. I didn't like it very much. It was all right. And I can start with the positives maybe.
Yeah.
There's some things that I do like when it goes into the body horror moments. I think there's a great visualization of that, like, you know, when Margaret Qualley is decaying and losing her fingernails and losing her teeth and all that thing. I enjoy those moments a lot, and I think that's the best part of the film is the body horror
I would
itself.
say so. It's the revival of those techniques that are so Cronenberg from the 80s. You don't see much of that today. So that
I
really
think you see it a
appreciated that.
bit in films that wouldn't probably make it to this sort of circuit of more mainstream films. I think in horror, like B art house films where you go to a horror film festival, you might see some of this sort of films, more gory and body horror. But I think it's definitely not the norm, not something you
I
would see
think
at a normal
Going
cinema.
beyond the body horror, what I mean specifically here, and I guess you were saying too, is the use of prosthetics, not CGI. Really,
Yeah, just generally, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes. Just to be specific.
For sure,
but
it's
yeah.
not something that we usually see in cinemas, not
There's great artistry
mainstream.
in it.
Yeah, exactly.
It reminded me of The Fly and stuff like that, you know.
I mean, and it's very clearly like French extremity, like that type of movement, like those films in the early 2000s,
Mhm.
Martyrs, those films, very extreme violence French films. That was a whole wave back then, and it seems to be in that tradition, especially given, you know, the filmmaker is, I think, French, so I think
Yeah.
there is
Mhm.
a connection there. And you know, there's other. I like there's a sequence with. Is it Demi Moore or Demi Moore? I never know if it's Demi or
I
Demi.
always say
Demi, yeah. I
Demi,
think
but
it's-
I think it's
I
Demi.
might be wrong. Yeah,
Yeah,
Demi.
I think I've heard someone interview.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But there's a whole sequence, which basically starts with you know, Margaret Qualley's character stays one night longer because she wants to, you know, have a party and have sex with this guy. So she extends it and takes the fluids a night longer than she should. And then later we see Demi Moore not staying longer, but she sets up a date with this guy, Fred. And as she's preparing to go out, she keeps coming back. You know, she sees the image of Margaret Qualley, and she becomes more and more insecure about her own self-image. And she's always, you know, either the makeup, it's not quite right. or the dress isn't quite right. There's always a little change that she needs to make, and by the end she just scrubs her face and is clearly frustrated. And I thought that moment was very well achieved as as an exploration of that idea of the beauty standards having a clear effect on you and how you see yourself. And I thought that sequence was one of the strongest moments that the film explores that without being so obvious and so in your face and so like hitting the same point over and over again, which I kind of felt for the rest of the film.
Actually, yeah, I completely agree, but I think it's a bit different for me because that scene was one of them that reminded me of the repetitions because I mean, I was already feeling that throughout the film, that the devices sometimes used to sort of unlock these fears on Elizabeth were kind of the same. But that scene to me kind of made me very aware of that. It was very sort of jarring in your face because, I mean, it seems like the only way that she can sort of have an eureka moment or a sort of panicky moment is by looking at the billboard
That's true, yeah.
or the TV, and like she keeps coming back, and it's always the billboard. And are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
kidding me? You've seen the billboard already like twice. Please don't panic again with the billboard.
Yeah, that's true.
It keeps coming back. It's not just that scene, but that one kind of annoyed me a little bit.
So, if you didn't get it already, over the billboard you get the words "They will love you," from the letter. Like, slap it in there, like you haven't already understood it.
There's like
But yeah,
the billboard, the flowers, and the TV. I mean, but I was a bit bothered because it's always within this sort of
yeah,
group
those
of
same devices. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's interesting that you're lifting something here which is interesting, which is the world of the narrative, and how do we go about this character struggle over the film lives in a very tiny space of references, of narrative devices. It's the billboard, it's the flowers, and it seems it's a very, I get it, it's a very plastic world because about a very plastic thing, a very thin layer thing, which is our exterior image, and how to sustain it when actually what's important is what's in it inside, and how do we make it show it, etc. But so the film is really, kind of has this effect of augmented reality, and a lot of the characters are plastic, like the producer fella feels like, they are not on a realistic register of acting, so to speak, which only enhances I guess, what the intention, the darker, uglier side of what is to be human, and be so afflicted by these shallow notions of beauty, and that is only the exterior, and so on and so on. But then I think it's almost like the film finds the perfect excuse, like, oh, see, the film is within this style, so you can't point a finger at us. But then I think it hurts the movie in other areas of being taken seriously, of being felt as relatable, so to speak. It is trying to do with something that is very relatable, even for women, very, very much. But also, I think men can find a dialogue with that, because all of us deal with these notions of our exterior image and our interior image, our exterior self, our, in our inner beauty. But then LA in this film feels like it's a non-city. She only exists within that studio, within that house, and then whenever
LA
she's
is
out,
a couple of palm trees
Yeah.
a couple of palm trees,
and a
she goes to a
street.
garage, and it's so weird, and she goes to these restaurants, and everything seems awfully empty. There's nobody on the streets. It feels like, and this is what I mean, it's an excessively plastic world to the point that I don't believe what I'm watching. There's something laudable in what the writer director wants to do, which is create a story where the character says very little and you can follow her train of thought. But at the same time, and there are clearly, moments of this where the camera is trying to take this subjective point of view and follow her eye line as she, interacts with this world and interacts with this method of becoming younger. Without saying, very much, but at the same time, I was constantly thinking about Seconds and what Seconds did better than this film, because I think I had much more of an access to the interiority of our main protagonist in that film. Then I wonder, is it because he's a male protagonist and I'm identifying with the man more with the woman? I don't think it has nothing to do with that, because there are so many barriers as well in that film. That's a man from the 1950s. I'm not a guy from the 1950s. So, it's not about that. It's just that in this film, she just feels like, Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, these two characters, this one person, Sparkle, I don't feel like I know her. I just don't feel like I'm holding hands with this main
And I would
character.
say, I would say that they feel
Mhm.
like complete separate
Complete
entities.
different. That's the other point.
The shared subconsciousness of the whole thing is like is fake. It doesn't happen in
Exactly.
terms of them. There's no dialogue between them like inside their minds in terms of you like one day or a week then affecting the other's week in a more clear way, or even the life of Demi Moore affecting the life of Margaret
The
Qualley
connection. Yeah.
in that sense. Or you clearly seeing that when she's Margaret Qualley, she's still behaving in ways and she's learning to behave as this new younger self. No, it feels like she's already like perfect as what she's supposed to be as a younger self. And then around 1 hour in, she's already speaking of Quali as she. She's already referring to she, and then the guy says, "Oh, remember, you are one." And it's like, okay, already we are
Yeah.
separated. So what the fuck am I
Yeah,
watching?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
why
Exactly,
am I supposed
exactly.
to feel
Yeah.
anything when she's given the opportunity? Then, like 1 hour and 25 minutes in, she's given the opportunity to go back to stop the experiment, and she's complaining about Margaret Qualley. She's saying she's a selfish bitch. She's draining my life, destroying me, all that. And then the guy's like, "Oh, you can stop then." And she's like, "Oh, I can." And then she doesn't. But why? Why don't you
But
stop? What do you get out
I
of
do
this?
understand there. I do understand there. I think why she doesn't stop, because
Yeah.
I think that's the moment, at least one of them, where we have an awareness that they are the same person, and so she kind of remembers, oh, that's me as well. So I don't really want to stop because I want to keep being young. And but I think that's a very sort of small moment that shows that they are the same person, and so that she has doubts and that she doesn't want to end the experience because she feels connected to her younger self. But yeah, I agree. I think other than that, there are not a lot of moments that showcase this, and so it does
This
feel like,
connection between selves, exterior and interior, so to speak.
yeah, it feels like too much of a disconnect of being clearly two different people. And there's another moment where she kind of, which is interesting, that Elizabeth's kind of going crazy and saying, "We have to keep the balance. Don't do this to me." And that's an interesting moment because you feel that connection, and that they are the same person, and that there's an attempt at a dialogue, interior. But that's again very, that's a very small moment, and yeah, it's
When
very
does that
little
happen?
overall. No, it does happen. I think she's
No,
already
no,
kind
when
of
does that
crazy.
happen? I'm not saying it doesn't, I just don't remember it. Can you say when it does?
She's already at a point where she's losing the hair. I mean, Margaret Collins has already been through a lot of time living, just herself. So when Elizabeth comes back, she's kind of like completely old, and she has this sort of panicky, like, keep it together, don't do this. We have to respect the balance. And there's a hint that
Well, she's
she's
talking
sort
with her on
of,
the TV, right? That's the moment.
no, no, no. It's not that moment, because that one I remembered that they were already sort of being distinguished again, and I didn't like it because again it was like, I mean, she was on the TV, for Christ's sake. How can she not? How can she say these things like she didn't remember the answers that she gave on
Exactly.
the
There's no
interview?
semblance. The movie progressively walks to that place of them being clearly different people and not clearly having the same experiences, which is odd. But at the same time, wanting to show in little moments, as you say, that go amiss, that they do have some semblance of connection. But this
But
falls
it's,
again
yeah,
in
it's too
that, yeah,
little to me, yeah. And I think it should be more, because otherwise they're
definitely.
just two different people, which I get, because the whole point is saying that you become two different people, and as you age, and you're supposed to be
And then the
different.
experience by becoming two different people, it becomes completely sci-fi and completely foreign towards the human experience of exterior and interior self, because that's what this film wants to talk about. And if they become completely two different, then you go off to the land of, okay, this is unreal. This that has nothing to say about reality. But the film, once again, all this that we're discussing, I think falls into that other thing said, which is it's easy for the film to flee criticism because at one level this situation of are they two identities, are they the same, at one level supporters of the film, or who may defend the film or who may like the film, may say, and I understand their side, that on one side of the coin Oh, of course they are different people because your exterior fighting your interior. In this case, being that the interior is Elizabeth old, and the exterior, the perfect beauty, is Elizabeth the younger version. And so they're always fighting each other. One does not want to give up the other. So you can say all that,
Like conceptually, yeah, sure, but
conceptually,
practically,
but practically in the narrative, a lot of questions are raised that, dramatically speaking, just don't make sense. For example, from the get-go, in regards to this, to what the product, the substance, promises. For example, when Elizabeth Sparkle gets this pen from this doctor dude, who is a client of this organization, by the way, I don't know how he is a client and is someone who works for the organization at the same time. And then later on, when he's revealed to be a client, as he is an old man that she finds in a coffee house, he's on a complete position than we saw him earlier. He's like, oh, have you found out, have you, that this sucks? You know, what? You sold me this shit. So
Yeah, but he's going through the same
client?
thing she is, that they are again two
Yeah,
different
I
people.
But,
So
accept
but
that.
at
he's
least
a
there
client
it's
and
coherent.
he's working for them. No, he's a client
Yeah,
and he's working
that's
for
I
them.
don't know.
No, it's
Maybe
like a
gets
pyramid.
for me.
It's like a
Yeah,
pyramid
it's a
scheme. Yeah, no.
gets a
I think I
commission
got
for
it.
everyone he gets in.
I didn't. Well,
Exactly.
fine, okay, fine. I didn't got that part. It was just odd to me. One, is he a client? He's working for them. Is he in favor of them or against the organization? That
Herbalife.
got me a
It's
little
like
bit odd.
Herbalife. The consumers are also the sellers, so it's that type of thing.
Right.
Just to add something to what you were saying, that this sort of thing of them being so different that it becomes unreal or not realistic. I mean, that's kind of exemplified at the end when they literally become two different people, which kind of begs the question: how if if they have the same consciousness, do they suddenly have two different bodies with the same consciousness as well? I mean,
I guess she's an anomaly in the system. I guess they never came to this point.
sure, yeah, but it also feels a bit easy to just get to that point if you just need to revive the person after you've terminated. I mean, did they never
Yeah.
test that?
Sure.
I mean, again, it's just a little
It
detail,
comes
but
to the point of what is the
clearly
meaning
they
of this?
become two
What are
different
you
people now.
taking out of this anymore? If she's different from you, if we come to that point, what are you, Elizabeth the old, taking out of this? What's your, because supposedly you want to take some joy, you want to have some your own emotions, sensibilities, experience in that other young body. We don't really get an answer to
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
But for example, in the beginning, I'm just going to finish that strain of thought. Just the way it regarding this thing, like the struggle of the character, knowing the character, all this, I don't feel I really feel her struggle, feel her asking questions out of this thing that she's being exposed to. The moment she gets that pen drive, okay, like, don't you want to call them? Ask, like, because she knows the basic premise. You're going to have a younger self come out of you. We're like, I immediately thought when she received that, when she learned that premise, okay, first question, do we have two different consciousness or are we the same? That was immediately my first question. And it was amazing how the film progressed, and if progressively they became two different consciousness. And I thought, oh, this is clearly becoming a problem. And I cannot believe that she gave herself away to this experience without calling, like, okay, what's the contact for the support of this, the substance.org, like, are we gonna have that? Because that would be pretty crucial. Like, am I feeling the same thing she's feeling or not? And she doesn't
On
pay
that
for the
side,
experience.
I think that it's strange because the film, I don't
Mhm.
think a film would go there. Like, okay, maybe I said it's strange. It's not strange. It's not strange that the film goes there because, I mean,
Goes there
would you
where?
really want to just have these scenes of her sort of Googling a black market
No,
company
no, 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 no. That's not
and
it. That's not what I'm
asking,
saying.
how does this really work?
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm
No, no,
saying.
but the point is,
In
the film
seconds.
can't ask those questions.
What? In seconds? There are plenty of questions that this guy asks about the organization, and you're fine with it the whole way
But the
through.
allure of the
How are you not
film
fine
is
here?
that everything is sort of you find out on your own. I mean, there are no instructions. Everything, which I agree, it's weird. I mean, she kind of figures everything out on her own. There are no like, there's no like an instruction list like do this, do that. I mean, it's kind of strange, obviously.
There
But at
is
the
an
same
instruction
time,
list. When she receives the whole package of food for this, food for that, this
no,
goes
that's
there, this
hardly an
goes there.
instruction list. That's just
It
what
is
it
some
is.
instruction.
No, but if you think about it, if you just receive that, you think, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? It's very ambiguous. I mean, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I wouldn't really.
I mean, I've had like IKEA manuals that have much more detailed instructions that I still
Yeah,
fucked
sure.
up.
Yeah,
So
okay, fine. But
Yeah, I mean,
listen, my suspension of disbelief, if I was her, I would be asking just questions that in seconds that guy asks. And it's not like a betrayal of being nuanced or whatever. It's just what would be like common sense. And this woman throws herself to this, and then she makes wrong decision after wrong decision. When her finger starts to rot and she makes that first phone call that you were discussing, Lenny, I'm like, stop it right now. But no, like, oh yeah, sure, let's continue.
Yeah, no, especially because in that phone call, she already
She's
referred
always making wrong choices.
she already referred to Margaret Qualley as another being. So it's like,
Uh-huh.
what are you getting out of this?
And she goes into a
I
garage
don't
and she thinks
understand.
it's perfectly fine. Oh yeah, a garage in the middle of an alleyway. This looks pretty disgusting, but she must be safe. It's incredible how she does not ask any questions. I just, I'm like, my mouth is speechless. Like, you can,
From that end,
would you do that?
I'm
I
okay.
wouldn't do
I'm
that.
okay with characters making that type of decision. It's all like I accept it more. It's more that once the plot machinations start, she needs to be smarter for me to buy her like her shortcomings as a character. Still, I don't
But
know.
the
There,
fact of the
she
matter is that she isn't smarter.
yeah, exactly. She
Because if
just
she
kind of
was afterwards, let's say, if she made, smart decisions that, okay, were smart upon the making of the decision, but then the consequences were unexpected and she gets hurt back, even if, okay, she made smart choices to fight back the problem. Now, later on in the film, when she already has the other self, and the consequences went bad, but she made smarter choices. I could forgive like these earlier choices of, okay, I'm going down an alleyway, I'm going to go into this garage, I'm going to go into this whole organization spiel,
but
even though I didn't ask any
those I
questions.
think are more acceptable because there's the
I'm saying I would
promise.
accept
There's
them better
okay, I
if she
get it.
was smarter down the line, so to speak.
Yeah,
Okay, she's not a complete dum dum, but then later on, she's like, rotten finger. I guess everything will be fine. I don't know.
but
She's just
I think the
allowing
question
herself to
here
do
is
this.
that there's a promise of a younger self, of beauty, of perfection, of a maintenance and the preserving youth, and that's why she takes the substance in the first place. It's a stupid decision, but I understand the impulse, which is the same
No,
impulse
I
that people
understand that too. Sure.
do cosmetic surgeries or do like these grueling processes
But
that are bad. Wait, let me finish. That are
sure, sure,
bad.
go ahead.
Things that are bad and are painful to them, but they get something in return, which is like, I mean, if you do a rhinoplasty, you get a better nose from your perspective, and maybe you breathe worse, and maybe like it has fucked up consequences, but you get the thing that you wanted, which is the perception of others is more positive towards me, or you feel better about yourself, even though for your well-being this is not that good. But here, like Demi Moore's character, she doesn't really get anything in return because of what we were talking about, which is they feel like two complete separate entities. So this promise of youth and beauty, it doesn't feel like she gets anything out of it because she doesn't feel like Margaret Qualley. So it's why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep switching bodies when you know that she's just gonna ruin you further? It's like, why does she keep doing it? That's what I think the film failed at making you understand the character's choice. Because then it just feels like, oh, she's stupid. And I don't think that's positive for the film.
No, yeah, and again, it's because of this thing that we're saying that these moments where we feel that the same person are very scarce, and they should happen more often, and in a more interesting way too, because often it's just after sort of panic rants, and it would be interesting to see something more nuanced, more like considerative of the characters, not just in moments where clearly they're panicking about the decisions that the other one made, and so clearly they have to think about it. I mean, that seems a bit
Yeah, it's just
forced
friction.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like, I understand what you guys are saying, and I totally like part of the inherent allure of a film like this that deals with these issues of the exterior image and the inner image is that one betrays the other naturally. We betray our interior selves in order to make our exterior beautiful because we value that more than what's inside, and that's why
Yeah,
the
but the
film gets a
but the
pass on all of the stuff.
themes
Yeah,
can't
what?
the themes can't overstay the plot. I mean, I get that because it's thematically it's what the film's trying to say, but I also don't think they should overimpose on the film itself and the narrative and the plot
That's
because
precisely what
then
I'm saying.
yeah that
I agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah
yeah. I think that's why the film, because it deals with these ideas that more often than not in a very obvious way that we all as people can relate to and identify. We know what that dialogue is between the interior and the exterior. It gets a pass on a lot of its, plot for the, has for, not for me particularly, but what I imagine for the audience at large that likes the movie, it gets a pass for a lot of its shortcomings in terms of plot. But I think that in reality, so it's difficult sometimes to point fingers, but in reality, it does have these things as the fact that we don't understand how one self communicates with the other, how Margaret Qualley communicates with Demi, and so how is she benefiting from this? And then to me, it's just like going back to the beginning. Like to me, it's like I understand completely because of those notions that we have of how the interior and exterior, communicate with each other, that sometimes betray each other, and that it's very much to do with impulse. We betray ourselves. We want to do the easy path, become beautiful. Okay, I get the idea, the impulse that you described, Lenny. But even then, this methodology, this process of becoming beautified, of becoming better, is presented in this film, by which you create another self separate from you, is one thing different than, for example, what happens in Seconds, which is still you, but it's plastic surgery. There's a change of self, but it's still your same body. Still, even then, they are both risky processes to do with your health. On one hand, in Seconds, the man asks questions, which actually, and in the process of those questions, you find out who he is. You find out, for example, something very personal. At one point in his youth, he wanted to be a painter and whatnot. So that creates an interesting conundrum for him. They give out paintings to him, which are signed. He doesn't have to do anything. And that creates an interesting dialogue with the audience. Well, what is to have paintings that have your name on it, etc.? But then you didn't go through the process of actually earning them. Then nothing is meaningful. All that work, you can find a new identity, a new purpose in life, but if you didn't struggle for those things, you don't actually deserve them, and that's not a new identity. And that creates a dialogue with us that makes us personal to the character, and that makes it heartbreaking when you start seeing him trying to live up to that life of a painter, and he doesn't see himself in anything. With Elizabeth Sparkle, I just feel like she is this one thing, this one golden nugget of becoming beautiful. But there's very little other layers around it, as it is in Seconds with the painter layer. There are other layers to the character. There are other things to the character around that golden nugget of a goal that make him interesting, that make him have an inner life, that make him have a dialogue, that make me have a dialogue with him and ask questions. And so, I don't feel like I feel like this film is just a premise. It fulfills the premise, and for that sake, it's a competent film, a flashy film, a style film that it's competent on its own, but outside of that, there is a lot of questions regarding its plot. Particularly the fact, once again, the beginning, like, if I was splitting my personality in two, there were two selves, I get the impulse to, okay, the solution, finally, I'm going to become beautiful, but I want some security. I want some safety net. I want to ask a professional, particularly when something is online. There is something very panicky about when you are with an app, like Uber driver, or Glovo, or whatever. And when you have a complaint, you cannot, go to a physical place to complain. It's detestable. This is one of the horrible things about the online world, is that when you want to complain and your food doesn't arrive on time, and in this case, your body doesn't arrive well, you cannot move to a place and talk with somebody. That's the frustration. So even worse, she knows that this is even worse because she cannot meet anybody physically. It's only over phone. I mean, my suspension of disbelief gets a little bit hurt here. That's all. Because like I would want safety net, like for me to go with this thing of split into two different selves, I'll really be like, okay, what's gonna something, someone to talk to, and then okay, I would address the impulse, go with the flow, do what is asked me to. But if I was made to feel myself, the client, safe, which is something that everybody wants to feel safe when doing a procedure that is to do with ourselves face, everybody. It's like it's integral. It's part of your nature. You're not going to mess this up unless you want some certainty. Then I would buy into it. Because that doesn't happen, I'm like, I really have a hard time believing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's another example of the themes again sort of imposing themselves because they're trying to say this message of, you know, at a point of desperation, you kind of just go and you do it and you don't think about the consequences. But again, plot-wise, it's not something that you can really fully engage with because then it raises a lot of questions. And I think part of what you're saying also kind of connects with what we were saying before, that LA seems such a like a non-city because the whole film is very contained and I think too much so. it's like all in this apartment. It's completely about the interaction of these two women, which are the same. And you don't really feel like, I mean, it's a long film for a horror film, like 2.5 hours almost. Very contained in this environment, and everything else seems like it doesn't really exist. So yeah, I think somewhere in the process of the writing and the choosing, how to frame the film and thinking about the film, it got too caught up in just the dynamics of these two women, which are the same, and too much about how they are messing with each other and not really going into more subtle ways in which the character is really needing to inject herself with this and dealing with the consequences in a more interesting way. I don't know. At some point this film I just thought, okay, I'm just looking at two women in an apartment. Just I don't know, it's just the thought that occurred to me. It was like, okay,
And it feels like it puts you on autopilot, the movie. It puts my brain on autopilot. Like I'm just
yeah,
seeing
it's
the
very
unraveling of
formulaic.
what the
It's
premise is. It doesn't surprise me with questions, dramatic questions, with thoughts. I don't have an access to her inner life, so to speak, like I gave the example of Seconds. And it's just them two kind of interacting and, even her, what does the old woman do? The old Elizabeth, just stay in the apartment, eating away, not doing anything. I understand as well. She's becoming older. She doesn't want to go out. She gives her whole life to the younger self. But if the experience evolves to such a point where you're feeling your old self is feeling unhappiness, and you're not feeling, and us audience are not feeling that at least she's getting some fulfillment that she's aware of in the young self, then what are we striving for? What is this all worth for?
That's the part where they
Um,
should have connected, because those moments, it's clear to me that she doesn't end the experience because she knows she's about to return to being young. So she clearly knows that she's the same person, and it's always that's a very interesting sort of premise of her mindset, like to know that she doesn't end it because she knows what's coming and she can't wait for it. And so it's almost like a little sacrifice. But they don't make it obvious enough. And so yeah, it does feel like she just bears it all. And she's just there sitting and being old and eating away. When they should have hinted that this person is about to become the other person, that they know this.
yes, yes, that there's some lingering consciousness of the interior self in the exterior self, so to speak, in the
Yeah.
Margaret
It
Qualley.
feels too much sometimes like they just follow the rules, like, okay, it's the end of the 7 days, let's switch. And it should be more than that. It should be like a real connection.
When she's her older self, when she's like when she's at that more monstrous phase, it's like it feels like she has more hatred towards Margaret Qualley's character for doing that to her. Whereas maybe a more interesting thing would have been to really lean into the fact that maybe she would hate herself for looking this way, and that's why she would want to constantly switch back to their younger self. And I think that's there just like hanging above the air and like kind of there, but it's not because she's just, she's watching the TV and she's, "Ugh, I hate her," and she's making fun of her when she's on the talk show and all that. So it feels, again, it's that friction. It's like she's just completely hateful of this idealized version of herself. Whereas if she was more conflicted and was like, oh, she did this to me, but I like the feeling of what I am when I'm her. But you don't really feel that. You don't get, as Tomás was saying, an access to her interiority. And that's the difference. Like Seconds is ultimately character driven. You get an access to that guy. Like you understand his thought process, you understand his ambitions and his shortcomings and his problems. Whereas this movie is more premise driven. It's more about exploring this, the idea of the substance, and not so much the Demi Moore's character and their problems and their insecurities. And I think it's a lost opportunity because that seemed like the most interesting part of the film is like how how someone was willing to put themselves through this because of that promise of youth and beauty. But even when they switch, we rarely stay any time with Demi Moore. It's like they switch around 35 minutes is when Margaret Qualley comes into the world, and then 10 minutes later, I think 44 minutes, it's Demi Moore is back, and she's like, oh my god, it doesn't do much. She's waiting to switch back, but it's like 3 minutes of this, and 47 minutes, it's Margaret Qualley again, and then 1 hour in. So again, we spend so much more time with Margaret Qualley than we do with Demi Moore, and because you don't feel like they're the same person as it in theory is, it feels like you're losing the main character and you're losing what would be the emotional center of the film, which is this older woman, this fading star, subjects herself to something horrendous in the name of preserving beauty and youth. And that seemed to like such a rich concept and idea that's completely lost in the film.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
when I
just
saw the
this.
trailer for the first time, I was actually eager for the film. I was actually curious for the film. And then I saw the film and the feeling went away, a bit like with Past Lives. I saw the trailer for Past Lives. I was really eager for it. And I saw the film. I didn't have an emotional connection with it. But yeah, and also what you're saying is that is if it had accomplished that aspect, what we are all saying here of there being a cross between the two consciousness that was visible while being different, so to speak, it would have given way to its intentions, which are clear in the sense that, like, I do understand what it wants schematically in terms of its structure and the relationship, where the relationship of love and hate, right? It's the thing that thematically is relatable in the sense that so this is all to do with the fact that as she becomes older, we get less time with her. She consumes more food. She goes to waste, and the whole time is spent with exterior self. So she enjoys life and her beauty and her newfound job again at the studio. And so you can understand that the true self, the inner self, is deteriorating, is left to nothing, is left to miscare. Like I get that. Uh, and I get the intention of the movie towards that progression, what it means, of course. But the very fact that the two consciousness don't connect as much, we don't see that. So we don't really see what she's taking from the experience that brings her joy to this first side of her that we meet, which is the old self. That's the old self is the true Elizabeth Sparkle. That's the character we come to meet first on Margaret Qualley. That's a byproduct. So that self is the one we should see having some kind of fulfillment from this, from the other's experience, but we don't. So the significance of that structure, which is jumping from one self to the other, and clearly the exterior, the inner self becoming deteriorated, becoming old, becoming completely destroyed and uncared for, and yet continuing with this. Do I understand the intentions and I understand its relatability in the real world? Um, it becomes without weight because of that cross. Yeah. I do really like the scene as well. I agree where she's in front of the mirror and she's coming back and forth before the date and trying to change her appearance over and over because that was kind of very relatable, in terms of man or female, in front of the mirror before you go out and coming back and trying to remake herself and looking at the time, looking at the phone, what the other person is saying, not saying, and you're just nervous about when am I going to go out? Do I have my keys or am I well? And just going back. And that was very human for the first time in the film. Beyond any sci-fi conception, that was a moment that was grounded, that you felt you had an access to something that was yet again relatable and not just thematic, included in the narrative, the plot. I can see it. It's behavioral and it's translating something to me that we all know. And that's what one of the most powerful things that cinema can do, taking something from reality that we all know and put it in front of the camera, give it truth, which is this routine of back and forth of trying to make yourself better, and yet your image of your outer self being completely destroyed in your mind, and nothing yet that you do will correct that, sadly. And I do like her image in the doorknob. I think was curious as a shot, distorted. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think one of the stronger aspects of the film really is the acting of all of them, really. I also really like Dennis Quaid as the sort of crazy producer. But I mean, Demi Moore has like such a humanity and kindness to her acting that I felt that was really on point. And that scene you exemplified was a good one, but I also really enjoyed the one where she decides to call back Fred. It was very sweet. I mean, the way she acted, it was very sort of real, and I mean, yeah, overall the performance
Yeah, that whole
can
scene
instill
works
that
very well.
humanity,
Yeah.
yeah, can instill humanity and simplicity to our character, which the film really needed. And then Margaret Qualley is also, very, very nice in the role. Can't make up for everything, but
Yeah.
There are
And
some
then
good aspects.
other notes under
The music is
the
also good. I
umbrella.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, the music is good. Yeah. Another thing under the umbrella of the too much plastic world that becomes unrelatable. It's also um, just what she does for a living. You know, she's this apparently three-time Oscar winner, big actress, but then she's doing this aerobics show, and I get it. You don't quite know when is this, but it's kind of weird anyway. Even if I don't know when is this, it's kind of like this is a very 80s thing, and this doesn't
Yeah,
seem like it's an
exactly.
80s movie. It's like who cares about an aerobics show? Who gives a shit? And then it's the New Year's Eve show. I'm sorry, what? Who cares? Like, there's nothing relatable that I can. If it was an award show, okay, but I know you have like a sister image of that in our real world that grants or lends importance to what I'm seeing. Like, I would understand the importance of this, but New Year's Eve show, what is this? Like a C-list program? I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure
It's
that in
like,
America they had stuff like
They
that
yeah,
do, they
sure,
too,
do.
it's possibly, but
and
I just didn't buy the whole.
It's more the aerobics thing, like, because it's something that's like to us right now. It's complete. I don't. It seems so
Such a
dated. It seems
twat
like such a
thing, you know.
dated idea to put in the film as an idea of like, oh, the artificiality and the obsession with like bodies. But it's such an 80s thing, as you were saying. It's like,
Yeah, you understand the function of it because it's very immediate about the body and about the exhibition of the body. Like I get it. If you want something
and
that is that,
artificial
do
because
something
of the
physical, yeah.
music and the editing that they
And
do.
the extra
Yeah.
positivity. Let's go, legs up, you know. But yeah, the question of how do you relate with it in this day and age, it's just weird because it wouldn't be something that you would think about of relevance that people. And people really do connect with this. You know, this is a big thing. This is a big deal. You know, and I'm just like,
And then it becomes super the film it the feeling I had was very similar to like the feeling I had watching Triangle of Sadness. It's just, oh my God, move on. Like, I get it. And then the movie just becomes super discursive about its ideas. It's super
over
obvious.
serious about its
Yeah, like for
ideas.
example, when she's a monster and everybody gets up, monster, and starts attacking her. It's like
Yeah.
it's this vision of humanity that's so obviously like satirical and exaggerated and hateful, even like that people can't, they just become these monsters out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, but it's just
Again,
so without nuance. It's so without like the moments of humanity and of care for one another. It's just friction. It's just hate. Even, the two share a consciousness. Like, there's no moment where you feel just one caring for the other, even if it's like one week, one of her leaving something for the other, or a thing like a gesture, something. It's completely just friction. And, I get it. That's the intention of the film. If it lacks,
yeah,
like
exactly.
the
And
beauty
the
of life, I guess.
again, and the film will defend itself by saying, "Oh, but it's sarcasm. Oh, but it's we are revealing how plastic our world is. Because it's all within our style. It has this. It uses the style as a pass, but the fact is, it becomes so plastic. So monster that you can't look at it and relate. This is beyond me,
Yeah, yeah.
beyond my
And it excuses, and for me,
capability.
like, I understand that that's the intention. And I think from that perspective, congratulations, I clap, you achieved what you wanted. I don't like it
Uh-huh.
though. And also, it serves almost like an excuse, which is it's so over the top hateful, the people. Like Dennis Quaid is not, it's so over the top misogynistic that it's like people can look and be, I'm not that guy. I would never be so obviously out of touch with what someone in front of me is feeling because he's so like he's eating the shrimp very in a very over the top way,
You're very obviously making him disgusting and unaware of his
Yeah, yeah,
disgustingness. And,
which
and you
is
get it, like, yeah.
intentional, obviously, but it serves as a, it's a distance between the audience and the movie, which is the audience just looks at it and it's, oh, it's happening in that world. In our world, it's clearly different because misogyny is so much more
Yeah,
like subtle and
that's a very good
hate
point.
and like the neighbor, the front door neighbor would be a good vehicle to explore that type of misogyny, but even him just becomes like this, oh, call me, yeah, you will have that drink, girl, uh-huh, and then goes away. It's like, it's so, obviously, that guy sucks, we get it, like,
They just seem like empty people, empty-headed people, like empty-headed
everyone,
people.
Everyone in this film is empty-headed
like
except
just
Demi Moore,
cardboard
I think.
characters. And except Demi Moore, she's what's interesting is that she's the more grounded one, so to speak. Everybody else is like playing at 11 of over the topness.
Everyone else is an
Margaret
NPC,
Qualley,
basically.
Yeah.
it's a bot. And then Margaret Qualley, even which is herself, she's part of that over the topness suddenly because when she greets that guy at the door, she's like, "I'm Sue.
Ew.
Don't you like me?" And like, what? Like clearly part of that language. I'm like, I'm sorry, aren't you the same character? Anyway, bro, I'm like,
That would have been a
I don't know
great
anymore.
moment. That would have been a great moment to explore that they are the same, that's Elizabeth, and she could, fuck with that guy, try to be like mean to him or something like that. But she's kind of like, oh, okay, and then she goes back and rolls her eyes or something. But it's not enough. You don't feel it. Yeah, but there's some like really disgusting moments that I like the when she's putting the needle in her back and the thing is like filled with like that
Pus.
disgusting pus.
Yeah.
Ugh. But like that's a movie that can make me like
In
squeamish.
terms of its
I appreciate that.
production design, in terms of its makeup, in terms of its prosthetics, all those effects, all the creation of the world, it's beautiful, it's attractive,
Oh,
it
yeah,
sells
for
the
sure.
idea. And I really like the anonymity of the bathroom. It really is something out of the Holy Mountain, certain set pieces from the Holy Mountain of Jodorowsky, where you have this complete white room with these black lines, and it's like it's what happens in an asylum. They make those rooms one color to mess with your head, and there's no stimulus whatsoever to be taken from that. And so when there's those stimulus, if you're in a white room for a while, you will become insane, because you have nothing. And that's what that bathroom is in a way, which I thought was an interesting choice. And clearly she's very influenced by Kubrick in a blatant way, because when you go into that corridor of the studio and it's like that whole carpet, that whole infinity
Yeah. And
force
the bathroom.
perspective is
One
very
of the-
like The Shining, the bathroom, The Shining as well. So she's taking a lot from there.
The lenses she uses also as well, I think.
And doesn't she
but
use the music from 2001? Or did I dream
no,
that?
but
She
I think
does. I
she
think
does
so.
use music from Vertigo, from Bernard Herrmann, I
She
think.
does at the end. I was
I
listening
do
to
think
that when I
there's
was
quite a
thinking,
lot of
this is Vertigo.
references to
Yeah,
films. Yeah. Anything else?
But it's an interesting thing, Lando, that you were saying just before to do with Dennis Quaid. Dennis Quaid, of course, is fun, but when you create a caricature that is such a caricature that it does no longer resemble reality and it loses all kinds of nuance, for a film that's trying to strive for something that is relatable with all of us, and particularly women, to the fact that that's the protagonist, you create a problem, right? Because then he's easily something else, easily something different from human being, all the while hinting at our behavior. And it's just so these easy ideas, like let's make him disgusting. So let's have these really close-up inserts of the shrimp and him shaking the shrimp of, when you cut to 50, it goes away. What goes away? Really don't know. You're gonna make him now do some kind of metaphor. Oh, there he is, shaking the shrimp and being disgusting. And let's have another close-up on it. And for the
I mean,
shrimp,
I didn't mind that.
No,
That's
I
fine.
I thought it was a little.
I like the disgusting food moments in this film.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, because it's unique. You don't see too much of it in film, of like really disgusting food, like the way she films food in this.
And the sound design as well. It's always
Yeah, the sound design. Yeah,
I think I have seen more food-based movies.
I've not in this way. I don't think.
And also I've been thinking about food in films recently, so for my own writing. So maybe that's more in my mind as of late. That's all for today, folks. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find this on the podcast official Instagram and website pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. That's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.